Egypt seethed with oppression. The chains of Hebrew slavery clanked day and night, while an empire strengthened itself at the expense of the pain of a forgotten people. In this heavy scenario, when everyone waited for a warrior, God chose a simple-speaking man. But it wasn't Moses. It was Aaron, older brother discreet, until then a supporting actor in the story. Aaron was summoned by God to be the voice of liberation. It all started when Moses, before the burning bush, tried to escape his calling. "I am not eloquent," he said. His tongue was heavy, his confidence small. And then came the divine answer, "Your brother Aaron will be your spokesman." There, Aaron entered the sacred plot as the link between heaven and men. Not for his strength, not for his skill, but for his availability. Aaron did not question. He did not ask for signs, nor did he argue. When God called, he went. Imagine the scene. A man already of age, accustomed to the routine of slavery, is sent to find his fugitive brother and, together, confront the most powerful man on earth. It sounds crazy, but it was purpose. Aaron became the human channel of the divine message, the one who would transform words into impact. Before we continue, write in the comments where you are watching this incredible story from. I want to know how far the Word of God is reaching. Like this video, and if you are not yet subscribed, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more incredible stories like this one. His role was not small. He would be Moses' voice before Pharaoh, the transmitter of God's instructions to the people, and later the first priest in the history of Israel. But it all started with the silent obedience of a man who agreed to be another's voice. Aaron gave up the spotlight, did not seek glory, and yet was a key piece in the greatest liberation ever recorded. God did not need a professional speaker. He needed a willing heart. And there was Aaron, the unlikely one who would become indispensable. His call was simple, but his response changed history. When he opened his mouth, it was not just his voice, it was the echo of God himself among men. When Aaron left Egypt and set out into the desert to find Moses, he had no idea of the dimension of what was to come. He only knew that he needed to obey. The reunion between the two brothers, separated by decades, was more than a hug. It was the beginning of a partnership chosen by God. Moses carried the calling, Aaron the voice. Together, they would be the instruments to liberate an entire people. At the foot of Mount Sinai, Moses told everything that had happened. The burning bush, the voice of God, the clear instructions, and especially the resistance he offered. Aaron listened to everything in silence. He did not contest, he was not afraid, he just agreed. God had said that he would speak for Moses, and he accepted this mission without hesitation. They went down together to Egypt. There was no audience, no one was waiting for them with a party. But on the way, God gave signs. He showed Moses the power that would manifest itself in their hands. Aaron would be the one to carry these words firmly before Pharaoh's throne, and he knew it wouldn't be easy. After all, they were about to confront the most feared man in the world. The first meeting with the leaders of the Israelites was the first step. Aaron spoke, explained that God had seen the affliction of the people and decided to free them. He didn't try to impress. He just conveyed the message. The reaction was one of hope. For the first time in a long time, the slaves heard that God had not abandoned them. Aaron, who lived the same suffering, understood every look and every sigh. Soon after, the two brothers appeared before Pharaoh. It was Aaron who took the lead. It was he who said, "Thus says the Lord, God of Israel, let my people go." The palace was silent. But the king reacted with arrogance. He did not know their God and did not intend to obey. Still, Aaron did not back down. Before the divine order, he threw his staff to the ground. It turned into a snake. The Egyptian magicians imitated the feat, but Aaron swallowed the others. This scene marked the beginning of a series of confrontations that would change the destiny of Egypt and Israel. Aaron was no longer just Moses' brother. Now he was the face of God's authority before kings and slaves. And that was just the beginning. After that first sign with the staff, the tension in the Egyptian palace grew. Pharaoh was not impressed, but he was bothered. Aaron and Moses began to be seen as a threat, and not as two powerless old men. The confrontation was now direct. God gave clear orders, and Aaron transmitted each one of them firmly, even in the face of the king's arrogance. With each new visit to the throne, Aaron's posture remained firm. He spoke without stammering, without trying to soften the message. He repeated exactly what God told him to say, to let the people go. And when Pharaoh denied it, a new sign came. God warned in advance. Aaron listened, obeyed, and acted. It was he who stretched out the staff over the waters of the Nile, and they became blood. No explanation, no show. He just did what he was told. In the plague of frogs, Aaron was again used directly. He stretched out the staff over the rivers and lakes, and the frogs covered the earth. Each order he executed showed that he was no longer just a messenger. He was an active part of God's manifestation. This required courage. It was not easy to return to the throne, repeatedly knowing that the king could order him to be arrested or killed at any moment. But he continued. Moses spoke with God. Aaron spoke with men. This dynamic remained firm throughout all the plagues. Aaron understood that it wasn't about him. It wasn't about convincing Pharaoh with pretty words. It was about obedience. And no matter how much the king's heart hardened, Aaron did not fail to fulfill his role. He no longer acted based on fear. He acted out of conviction. The Egyptians began to realize that there was something different. Not even the magicians could imitate the signs anymore. And even when Aaron was not the direct agent of a plague, his presence already caused an impact. He became the face of resistance, someone who was not intimidated by threats nor by the slowness of change. Aaron was increasingly aware of the mission. It was not just about liberating a people, but about showing that there was a God above all. And this God spoke, acted, and transformed. And he, Aaron, had the privilege of being part of it. As the days passed, Egypt became the stage for events that no one could explain. Each plague came as a direct response to Pharaoh's refusal, and Aaron was present in all of them. Not just as a messenger, but as someone who lived everything up close, together with the people. He saw the animals die, the water be contaminated, the sky be filled with locusts. All before his eyes, the orders kept coming. Moses received the instructions, and Aaron was the first to hear. The relationship between the two brothers was one of trust. They did not argue about who was going to do what. Each knew his place. Aaron listened, learned, and did what was necessary. When God told him to stretch out the staff, he stretched it out. When it was time to talk to the king, he spoke. There was no room for doubts or delays. The Egyptian people began to feel in their own skin the weight of resisting God's will. The difference between what happened among the Egyptians and among the Hebrews was visible. While the houses of the Egyptians were invaded by insects, those of the Hebrews remained intact. Aaron noticed every detail. It was impossible not to realize that God's actions were precise. He protected his people, even in the midst of chaos. The plague of darkness marked a strong moment. 3 days of total darkness over Egypt, while the Hebrews continued to have light in their homes. Aaron saw that with each new punishment, God's power became even more evident. It was not human strength, it was not magic, it was pure authority. And he was there, in the middle of everything, firm in his post. The worst part came when God announced that the firstborn of every Egyptian family would die. Aaron listened to this word seriously. It was no longer about showing signs, it was about judgment. Together with Moses, he transmitted the instructions to the people about the mark of blood on the doors. It was the only way to escape death that night. They couldn't make mistakes, and they didn't. The next morning, Egypt was in mourning. Weeping spread through the houses. It was at that moment that Pharaoh yielded. He sent for Moses and Aaron and said that the people could leave. Aaron, who had followed every detail, knew that this was the result of a plan that began with obedience. Now they were about to leave. The exodus from Egypt happened in a hurry. Aaron was beside Moses when the people received the order to leave. It was no longer time to confront anyone. It was time to walk. They left the land where they lived as slaves for generations and followed through the desert without looking back. What would come ahead was still a mystery, but freedom was already a reality. During the walk, Aaron saw up close how the people reacted to each new difficulty. There was a lack of water, a lack of food. The sun punished during the day, and the cold tightened at night. Freedom, which seemed like the end of everything, was actually just the beginning of a new stage. Now they needed to learn to trust, and Aaron had a fundamental role in this. When the people murmured, Aaron was one of the first to be called by Moses. God spoke to Moses, but the actions involved Aaron as well. The two were leaders before a huge and unstable people. When the people complained of thirst, Aaron was there. When they asked for meat, he also heard. It was becoming clearer that he was not just a spokesman. He was a reference. Shortly after, God began to separate functions among the people. Aaron was called clearly. God wanted him and his sons to be responsible for spiritual matters. He was not just another among the Levites. He was the chosen one to be the first high priest. This calling changed everything. Now he stopped being just the one who spoke on behalf of Moses and started to represent the people before God. The special clothing was made with details, as were the instructions about the sacrifices, the rituals, the objects of the tabernacle. Aaron began to be trained by Moses on every detail. He needed to know what was holy, what was pure, what could and could not be touched. It was a new type of leadership, more sensitive, more focused, more responsible. God's trust in Aaron was evident. Despite all the risks he had faced in Egypt, now the challenge was different. It was keeping the faith of the people alive in the midst of a hostile environment, day after day. And this responsibility was only just beginning to grow. God's instruction about Aaron's new role was not long in coming. Soon came the details about his consecration. God was specific. He separated Aaron and his sons for the priestly service and ordered them to be purified, clothed, and anointed, according to an order that could not be changed. That was more than a religious function. It was a spiritual responsibility before the entire nation. Moses followed everything as the Lord had commanded. He gathered the people, called Aaron and his sons, and before everyone began the ritual of consecration. Aaron had his garments placed on him one by one: tunic, belt, robe, breastplate, turban. Each piece had a meaning. None was placed by chance. Afterwards, he was anointed with the sacred oil, prepared especially for that moment. The sacrifices were also part of the process. Moses offered bulls and rams. The blood was used on the altar, on the garments, on the ears, on the hands, and on the feet of Aaron. It was the sign that he was separated. He would no longer be just Moses' brother or the well-known leader of the people. Now he was the high priest, the only one authorized to enter the most holy place once a year to present the blood of atonement before God. For 7 days, Aaron remained in the tabernacle, fulfilling the consecration ceremony. He couldn't leave. It was a period of preparation where he needed to be completely aligned with everything he had received. The people watched everything carefully. Many still did not understand the importance of that moment, but it was the beginning of something that would last for generations. When the days of consecration ended, Aaron began to exercise his new function. He began to offer sacrifices in the name of the people. He was the one who approached the altar, who made the prayers, who took care of the rituals required by God. The tabernacle became the center of the Israelites' lives, and Aaron became the main responsible for keeping everything running as it should. His authority was recognized. The people respected his orders. The Levites saw him as a reference. Aaron was now before a task that demanded attention all the time. Any mistake could have serious consequences. But he remained firm, knowing that he was chosen not by merit, but by direct will of God. The people were still getting used to the new system of worship when Moses went up the mountain to receive the tablets of the covenant. Aaron stayed in the camp with the responsibility of keeping order and conducting the rituals until his brother's return. Time passed, the days accumulated, and anguish took over the Israelites. Without news, they began to pressure Aaron. The dissatisfaction grew quickly. They wanted an image, something visible to represent the divine presence. They gathered around Aaron and demanded that he make a god to guide them. He yielded. He asked for gold earrings, jewels, and everything they had. He melted the material and shaped a calf. When he finished, the people celebrated and declared that this was the God who had brought them out of Egypt. Aaron tried to control the situation by creating a feast for the Lord the next day, perhaps in an attempt to mix the worship of God with that new idol. But it was too late. The people were celebrating, dancing, and offering sacrifices before the calf. The leadership he had received was put aside at that moment. He stopped leading and started pleasing. On top of the mountain, God saw everything and warned Moses. The wrath was immediate. The people had broken the covenant even before it was officially delivered. Moses came down in a hurry. When he arrived at the camp and saw the scene, he threw the tablets to the ground and confronted Aaron. Aaron's response was evasive. He said that the people were inclined to evil, that they threw the gold into the fire, and from the fire came the calf. He tried to justify himself, but there was no way to erase what he had done. The consequence was heavy. Moses ordered the Levites to punish those responsible. Many died that day. Aaron's mistake had a direct impact on the people's relationship with God. Even so, he was not discarded. God corrected him, but maintained his position. It was a clear sign that his calling had not been revoked, but would require more responsibility from then on. This episode left deep marks. Aaron saw how a slip in leadership could generate chaos and distance the people from the truth. It was a painful fall, but also a turning point in his journey. After the crisis with the golden calf, Aaron remained among the people, but with a different consciousness. He knew what he had done and what that mistake caused. Moses' trust still existed, but it was evident that the responsibility now weighed more. God, for his part, did not reject him. He continued to deal with him through clear instructions, and this showed that, despite the failure, his calling continued. The tabernacle was built shortly after. God gave all the guidance to Moses, and Aaron continued to be involved in every part of the process. Even after the serious episode, he returned to exercise his function as a priest. He was the one who offered the sacrifices for the inauguration of the tabernacle. When the fire came down from the sky and consumed the offering on the altar, the people prostrated themselves. It was a sign that God accepted that worship. Aaron was there, active, fulfilling his role under God's mercy. The restoration was not only public, it was also practical. Aaron continued to guide the people, supervising the Levites, taking care of the ceremonies, teaching the difference between the pure and the impure. He could no longer afford to hesitate before the pressure of the people. He learned from the mistake, and now he remained firm. The experience on Sinai was not erased, but served as a reminder of what happens when one gives up responsibility. Other episodes demanded his direct presence. One of them was when Aaron's sons, Nadab and Abihu, offered strange fire before God and died at the same time. Aaron was silent. He did not murmur, he did not question, he just accepted the divine decision. It was a heavy moment, but he remained in his post. Even in the face of personal pain, he understood that service to God came above all else. Over time, Aaron matured as a leader. The people saw in him not only a religious figure, but someone who carried the weight of leadership in an honest way. He knew where he had failed, and used that as a basis not to repeat the same mistakes. His authority no longer came only from the position, but from the path he walked. The journey through the desert continued, and with it came new challenges. Aaron continued in front, not as someone perfect, but as someone who had been restored and continued to serve. The routine in the desert was full of ups and downs. The people lived between moments of worship and outbursts of dissatisfaction. Aaron, as a spiritual leader, was in the middle of all this. He had to maintain order in the camp, accompany the sacrifices, guide the Levites, and still deal with the constant complaints. It was not easy to sustain the faith of a people who, at every moment, questioned everything. One of the most difficult moments was when Korah, Dathan, and Abiram rose up against Aaron and Moses. They no longer accepted the leadership and accused the brothers of exalting themselves above the community. The criticism was direct. Why was Aaron the chosen one as priest and the others were not? It was a rebellion against spiritual authority, and this put at risk the entire structure that God had established. The answer came from God himself. Moses instructed each tribe to present a staff representing its leader. Aaron's staff, representative of the tribe of Levi, blossomed during the night. It sprouted, gave flowers and almonds. It was the visible sign that he had been chosen by God and not by human will. This object was kept as proof inside the Ark of the Covenant. Aaron's authority was reaffirmed before everyone, but the opposition did not stop. On other occasions, the people complained about the food, the thirst, the path, the weather. Moses and Aaron knelt before God to ask for direction. They did not retaliate with anger, but sought answers. They knew that as much as they led, it was God who sustained the people. In one of the most tense episodes, God sent poisonous snakes as judgment for the people's murmurings. Many died. Aaron stood beside Moses, interceding, and then, when the Lord commanded, helped in the preparation of the bronze serpent, which would be raised to bring healing to whoever looked at it. Aaron also had to deal with his own limitations. He was not always understood. In many moments, silence was his answer, not out of weakness, but out of wisdom. He understood that leading a rebellious people required patience, firmness, and much prayer. In the middle of the desert, keeping the faith alive was a daily challenge, but he did not give up. The walk in the desert continued long, and Aaron was already old. The years of leadership, the confrontations, the pressure of the people, and the responsibilities before God left marks. He continued to serve, but knew that his time was coming to an end. The moment of transition was approaching, and God spoke to Moses about this directly. It was during one of the stages of the journey, when the people were close to Mount Hor, that God gave the order. Moses should take Aaron and his son Eleazar to the top of the mountain. There, Aaron would take off the priestly garments and put them on Eleazar. It was the clear sign that the priesthood would continue with his son. Aaron accepted without resistance. He knew that all that did not belong to him, but to the Lord. At the top of the mountain, silence marked the moment. There was no crowd, no public ceremony. Only Moses, Aaron, and Eleazar were there. Aaron handed over his function in the same way as he lived his journey, obeying. He took off the sacred garments, passed them to his son, and waited. It was there, in that simple place, that his life came to an end. He died peacefully after fulfilling his calling until the last day. Moses and Eleazar came down alone. The people, upon hearing of Aaron's death, wept for 30 days. His absence was felt. For many years, he had been a reference of stability, someone who stood between the people and God. Even with mistakes along the way, his dedication marked the history of Israel. The transition to Eleazar ensured that the service in the tabernacle continued. Aaron left a legacy that was followed by his descendants for generations. The priestly lineage became known as the House of Aaron. They continued with the responsibility of keeping the worship of God alive, of teaching, of offering sacrifices, of taking care of the purity and spiritual order of the people. Aaron's story ended in the desert, but the impact of his obedience continued for centuries. He began as an ordinary man, chosen to be the voice of a liberator. He ended as the first of a priestly lineage that represented the presence of God in the midst of the people. His life proved that a faithful calling can leave marks that cross generations. If you like Bible stories like this one, I invite you to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss the next videos. Leave your like and share this video with someone you love and needs to learn more about the Word of God. May God bless you, and until the next video.